All right. So why don't we kind of settle in? This is a new month again. So June 7th on the Monday call with Chris and Masami. Welcome everyone. So if it feels comfortable for you, closing your eyes. If not, just lightly looking downward. Pulling your chin down slightly, lifting the top of your head towards the sky. Noticing your sitting bones. Allowing your weight to rest on the chair that you're sitting on or the cushion that you're sitting on. Maybe just a little bit more so you feel held and supported. But noticing your spine lifting, even though your weight has been supported by the chair. You notice the sense of lift towards the sky. And noticing your legs, down your hamstrings, your thighs, knees, down your calves, shins, top of your ankles and your foot, each foot. And noticing the bottom of your feet, arches lifted, heels planted, toes spreading, wide open. So you could almost feel into the earth like you're walking on a sandy beach, and you can feel the sand moving up between your toes. And moving up to your torso again, softening the belly, strong back. Like Brene Brown calls it, the wild heart. But Joan Halifax, who's Roshi, a Zen teacher in New Mexico, says to have a strong back and a soft front. And Brene Brown added the wild heart. And I want to add one more to that. So rhythmic belly. So strong back, soft front, wild heart, rhythmic belly. See if you can relax into your armpits, where you might be able to place like the size of a golf ball in your armpits. So don't tighten those areas too much. Relaxing your elbows, down to your fingers. Sending love towards your body. And moving through your throat, jawline, softening your lips. Give yourself a slight smile, like you're smiling towards yourself. Some of us have forgotten what the smiley faces look like because we had to wear the masks for so long. So bring back the awareness of the facial expressions. Cheeks lifting. Eyes softening. And relaxing the forehead, coming into your third eye. And notice what your third eye is seeing this moment, inside and outside of you. What is it seeing? and travel up the forehead to the top of your head, the mohawk line, down your back of your neck, down your spine, down to your tailbone. Bring your energy down towards the back of your legs and bottom of your feet, full circle. And as you bring love for yourself, let's practice a loving gesture for yourself. So for a moment, imagine if your left hand got injured, maybe got pinched between a door or maybe something dropped. What would your right hand do for that left hand? It'll probably do the loving gesture for that left hand. So go towards where is injured, placing your right hand over the left hand, attending lovingly. We're doing this all the time. So noticing the loving gesture that your right hand is practicing. Feel that warmth, the weight of your right hand protecting the left, comforting, attending, listening, intuiting what it needs. And then slowly releasing your right hand. And then let's see if your left hand can attend to your right hand. Your right hand doesn't need to be injured. Doesn't have to be anything dramatic. Just the left hand is coming over to your right hand to say hello, attending, showing affection, care, kindness. Stay with it for maybe another 3 breaths, cycles. And when you're ready, slowly releasing that left hand. Rolling your shoulders a couple of times, maybe move your head side to side. Whatever way you'd like to begin to come back to this space, opening your eyes. All right. Well, today's topic is an interesting topic. I've been exploring this through my clinical work and working with my own body and my own life with Chris as well. And, I think this weekend was a moment that I was like, okay, I am not being loving to myself. And I thought this topic really needs to come about and we need to share. We need to switch our thinking around this. So what happened to me was this Saturday, it was actually Friday evening. I don't actually drink alcohol at all, but Chris said, he wanted to get some light, maybe Chardonnay or something like that, and chilled wine would be nice because Colorado's getting really hot. It's like 90 degrees now. So he went and got some, and then for dinner he poured a little bit, and I just had a little sip. But the moment I took a sip from it, I felt extremely dizzy, and I thought, oh, this is not good for me. This is not good for me. But I thought, we're having this wonderful moment. a nice dinner after working on a garden all day and working hard nonstop for like 9 months. We thought, okay, maybe. So I had a couple more sips, but it didn't sit well with me, so I put it aside. But that same night, I was I was in bed, both of us were in bed, and I lifted my head just to kind of adjust something, and my head started to spin. And I thought, okay, this is not good. But I just put my head back down, and luckily I fell asleep. But the next morning I was a little bit nervous because I thought, I don't know about this. I think there's something going on with me. So I was very careful in the morning to slowly open my eyes. And what do you know? The world is spinning. And I have not had a vertigo like that ever. Like, I cannot remember ever having that kind of a spinning situation. So what ended up happening was I had to call Chris. Chris came and I had to literally hang on to him. I'll take a couple steps and then I will kind of start to lose my balance. It just felt like the MS all over again for me. Chris stayed very calm and it was good because we know enough, we can do this. So we really went into to see what we can do. But I was in bed pretty much all day and I was so dizzy, I even threw up and everything else. So, at that point, I'm thinking to myself, you love yourself and you love the people you work with and you love the work you put out there. But where is this loving gesture towards yourself? And I just laid in bed all day that day, literally till about 5 o'clock. And Chris made me some bone broth porridge, Japanese style, with the salted plum in there called umeboshi in there, and made me feel a lot better. But, I just really started to think about that because I am teaching people skills and tools to how to take care of yourself. But in the name of trying to teach and trying to get through, I have forgotten how to be loving towards me. And I'm just fully admitting that to everyone. I feel a lot better. Today's Monday, so I had yesterday to just slowly get started. I had to cancel some clients, and then I decided that, okay, enough with working throughout every weekend, enough with not taking even a single day off. Like, this has just gotten to be too crazy. So, I am setting my own strong back, soft front. So boundaries in the back, be aware of what's happening. What am I opening to? And, the rhythmic belly wasn't rhythmic anymore for me over the weekend. So that was one example. And then this morning, so Chris loves to make his coffee in the morning, organic coffee. It's kind of his little ritual that he does. I love the smell of it. I do enjoy it. But I started to notice in the last month or so, every time I drink his coffee, and it's been the same coffee or the quality is really good. We always buy really good coffee. But I started to get phlegmy and I started to have this kind of thing. And I know what that means. And most of you know what that means because I've taught you what that means. It means you're having food sensitivity and possibly there's a little bit of allergic reactions to it. But in the name of sharing love for him and his love for coffee, and to show how much I love his gesture, I just kept drinking it and I would dilute it with a lot of hot water, thinking that's going to do its trick. And this morning I finally took 2 sips and I started doing that. And I actually went into my body and said, that's not loving, is it? I asked myself. My body's like, no, it's not loving whatsoever for you to drink that coffee that comes from the love of your life. It doesn't matter if it comes from Chris. It's still not loving to you. And it took me a little bit. I was just holding the cup for a long time. And I was wandering around the kitchen and I was kind of thinking, should I tell Chris this? And I finally said to Chris, I said, Chris, I don't think I can do the coffee anymore. I am going to quit coffee. And I put it down and I was really nervous because why am I nervous? Like, what's Chris going to say? He's like, okay, no problem. But I went back to a little girl where, get yelled at if I didn't eat something that my dad put out in the plate, or my mom will be so like offended if I didn't like what she made. So I went into this zone and I thought, all right, breathe through it, little Masami. And I came back and I put the coffee down and I said, honey, will you drink the rest of mine? And he said, sure. So everything was fine. But I'm bringing this up because how quickly we go from love and the actions that do not support that love, because my action wasn't loving towards myself at all. And stubborn people like me has to have a vertigo that is so bad that you're throwing up in order to put me to bed. So please don't do that, everyone. Don't follow what I did. All right. Stop before makes you so sick, okay, that you have to be in bed all day. But I'm grateful because my inner body said, now you're going to talk about the love versus loving topic. So I'll pause here and I will give this back to Chris. I know he has a lot to share here too.
Yes, this is an interesting topic. And one of the things that for me, I've found myself doing, again, in the name of love, is social eating in the evening, because Masami and I have very different metabolic needs. And she'll often eat later into the evening than I know is better for me. But because of wanting to have that feeling of closeness and connection and all of those things which are very easy to associate with love, um, I'm actually sabotaging my own body's needs. And that's something that I have even recently in the last course that Masami did. That was something that I committed to doing, is not doing that, and to really paying attention to what I need and honoring that and supporting that. And so, one of the things that we wanted to talk about with all of you today, getting into this topic, is actually getting a feeling for these terms. And so, what I'm going to invite you all to do right now is, you can close your eyes to do this, but we're going to crowdsource this. And the crowd is your own body. Okay. So, what I want you to do is just go ahead and find that comfortable position that is relaxed and alert, connected to the ground, connected to your seat. And so just settle into that. Maybe take a breath in and out of your nose slowly. And so now what we're going to do, this is not strictly speaking a meditation. This is just a deep paying attention to your system, your body system, which has so much intelligence. So we're going to tap into that. I want you first to say quietly to yourself. If you're by yourself, you can say it out loud if you like. You can also just say it in your mind. But say the word love. Just maybe repeat it a couple of times and see where you feel it. Where does it land in your body when you repeat the word love? And you might also notice, are there images that come to mind when you repeat that word? But most important, I want you to feel where it lands. What does it feel like when you repeat the word love? So we're going to come back and talk about this in just a moment. But before we do that, let's just shift gears and notice the subtlety when you go from love to loving. So now just sit with the word loving, loving, and repeat that to yourself. Same thing. Where does it land? What does it feel like in your body? when you experience loving? Just note any sensations. There may be images that come up. We'll get to the words and intellectual stuff in a moment, but for now, just feel it. And with those feelings still sharp, let's come back. Just gradually bring your eyes and alertness back to this space. And let's have a little conversation here about this in the chat. So right now, I invite you to start. Let's do this in an organized way so we know who's responding to which question, okay? So let's start with love. And Masami put it up in the chat. So where does it land in your body when you repeat the word love? What does it feel like? Okay, so let's start with that question. So Tanya wrote love, warmth, and hara. Okay, heart, Masami said. Mary Jo says vibration in my throat. Marion says love. I think that's maybe love equals heart. Heart and tension, warming in the heart, love in my belly, wrapping in an inverse C shape from the bottom to the top of my belly. Saying love. It started in my third chakra. It went quickly into my spine. Wow, you're responding so fast, I'm losing you on the screen. It went quickly into my heart. Aaron says lungs, easier to breathe, space. Linda says my central core, up my chakras. Okay, notice the theme here, everyone. Pauline says throat and chills around my shoulders. Shafika says a tension in my belly that everything contracts around. Sharon says love is in the belly. Okay. Patricia says the heart, stomach, and thighs. Karen, heart, some sadness. Deborah says central channel from heart to womb. The more said, it spread up to throat. Carrie says eyes. This is where I tend to feel really high vibrations. Chris says heart and belly. Okay, Mary says love depended on what I connected it with. Gut, heart, warm. Cheryl says loving. Okay, let's switch gears now. So I want everybody to notice that a lot of these things were about warmth and this spreading of this feeling. And maybe for a couple of you, it was a little bit difficult to feel that and repeat that and be in that field of love. And that's okay. But you can notice that there's a connection, especially back to the heart and the belly and the gut and the chakra connections. Okay, so very energetic. Let's switch gears. Let's see what came up for you when you repeated the word loving. How did that land for you? What did that feel like in your body? So Cheryl says, loving warms my chest, stays in my heart area. Tanya, loving, massive, swirling galaxy, warmth. Marion says, loving, felt it in my arms, wanting to hug, wanted to give a loving hug. Pauline, loving, was beginning to cry. Tracy, loving felt like giant wings around me. Mary Basse, warmth throughout the throat and opening. Linda says, spreading from my whole torso and white gold light. Richard, saying loving went to my upper left heart area. Mary Jo said it out loud. Tinny sound, hollow, been so isolated. Carla, loving, think of other people. Linda, softer, vibrational, chest and throat area, opening, supporting. Robin, love brought up sadness, stuckness. Loving felt warm, giving, easily accessible. Good, interesting contrast between those. Deborah, womb area, nurturing and rose-colored. Shafika, expansive, spreading, opening throughout the chest and more. Lynn, brought a smile to my face, wanted to act with the feeling. Martha, felt it in my gut, hungry. Sharon, breathing. Aaron, expansive light radiating out. Okay,
So you
So
can really see.
yeah.
Right. Okay, Chris, you want to take it? This is awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I'll tell you the immediate thing I saw as soon as these comments started coming in is movement. There was movement. There was action. There
Like
was
hugging,
yeah,
movements, warming up. You started using a lot of the ing words, right? Feeling, wanting to express that it's more of an action oriented.
and it just so happens that this is not an accident, and that this is what we wanted to talk about next. Is
Like Linda said, opening,
yeah,
supporting, so there's a lot, loving brings out our gestures and our movements forward. So there's a flow that starts to happen when you're in the loving state.
yeah, it's like a moving toward. There's something, either we're moving towards something or something is moving toward us. And whereas that love, you could see that it was more of a state versus actions and movements. So why don't we talk about this a little bit more? Do you want to, Masami? Do you want to talk about some of the contrasts that we were looking at between?
Yeah, maybe, clinically speaking, stuff might be very interesting here too. I gave my examples, and, Chris gave his examples about social eating, right? That especially when I'm working long hours, I actually need to eat some protein like 7:30, even sometimes 8 o'clock. So I would have a little thing of like beef jerky or, a hard-boiled egg or something like that with some butter on it or some. And Chris is like watching me, and poor guy, he's not, metabolic type is very different. I can eat a lot of things and then I don't, gain weight, but Chris has to kind of watch that part. So both of us really just have to work with our own loving ourselves, and it's not going to totally match up. That doesn't mean that we don't love each other. We just don't need to match up. And I think that's something that we've been learning after what we've been married this month for how many years now?
This is 16.
Yeah. So we're still learning, I'm sure. And then it's always going to change. But what I've noticed with my clients over the years, like I'll give you an example of my best friend who he would say, "Oh, to show how much I love myself, I have ordered a bunch of gluten breads, and because I love this bakery, and then they do this traditional baking, and then he would just go and he eat nothing but bread for the next 3 weeks, and he's really having a hard time. His gut is inflamed. He started to get shakes, and I mean, it was just terrible. So I really finally had to talk to him and said, I know you love bread. And he would use words like that. I love bread. I love the bakery. I love, to treat myself to something really fun. You only live once, that kind of thing. But I have to stop and say, but is it loving? Is it loving for you to continue to eat this way? And I think we make, choices, and we say to things like, oh, in the name of, showing how much I love who I am going to reward it with something that's tasty. But at the same time, is that something that your body is going to process well? Are you going to be able to digest that well? Is that going to be harmful to your inner body? And this is where you have to just pause and give it some space between what you love to how you're going to express that love by loving yourself in the way that if you switch it from loving foods to, love certain foods to loving yourself, then your choices will definitely change. Okay. Because a lot of people just say, oh, I just did that over the weekend because, I just wanted to just have something really fun and I was with people I love. Okay. But how was it loving to your system? Okay. So I hear that a lot. And then also I wrote down, like, in the name of accepting my body image, to keep the love, the image that is positive, you may actually continue to do things that are not very loving to your system. So I hope I made that clear there. If I didn't, Chris, chime in. And then other things like in the name of health, You might be over exercising. I see this a lot with my clients. They will go and exercise in the name of, I replaced that word love to health now. So in the name of health, they're going to go exercise and exercise. But what they're not realizing, that that's not very loving to your body. If you stop and thought about it, it's not very loving. And also I see a lot of people I work with are saying, oh, I muscle tested. So just last week, I had a client that was eating some chips while she was on that call with me. And I said, what are you eating? And she goes, oh, this, I got a little hungry. So I grabbed it before we started the session, and she showed me the chips that she was eating. And I'm getting the no, like from her body, no, no. And she continued to talk to me how much she loved this chips. This was organic and it was awesome, and it didn't use the bad fats. And she said, my body loves it. So I'm sitting here going, no, it doesn't. Like the body is screaming at me, telling her, no, we don't like this thing. So I said to her, I said, okay, could you please stand up and let's do the lean test and see if it's a loving gesture for you to continue to eat those chips. And I said, I need you to separate what you said to the body. So not what your brain, your head decided if it was a good thing or not. Let's ask your hara, let's ask your gut if the gut is happy with that. And then obviously soon after she held it, she went backwards, and she had this big eyes like, oh, I thought these were great. Look at the ingredients. It's all awesome. So I said, I don't care what the ingredients are. Okay. It's not good for you. It's not very loving towards you. And Chris will give the example quickly about our Costco trips that we've shared with you a couple months ago, right?
Yeah.
You want to share that one?
Yeah, this is actually a good teaching moment experience, because every time if we go into Costco, they do have some organic selections of things like chips or crunchy things that Masami will, kind of knowing what the answer is going to be, she'll drift down that aisle. And historically speaking, it never has worked out. It's never been a good thing for her system. But and for me, I'm a little more neutral to not caring if we get it or not. But we'll go to something and just say, oh, I really want this today. And so she'll muscle test it. And what we figured out is the questions that we have to ask. She started to say this. She would say, okay, do I want this? And the answer was, yes, I want this. But then she asked the question, is this good for me right now? Or something like that. And you can guess what happens. The answer always 100% of the time is no. So this is the fine line that we're talking about here, is the difference between the idea. It can even be the idea of self-love. It can be the idea about feeling love toward others. And we can even mistake that for what we're talking about with loving, meaning I love this other person, so I'm going to accommodate myself to them. And this is something that Masami and I have talked about a lot. She's gotten much better over the years of not trying to anticipate everything that I might need and then try to make sure I've got it. I mean, she was very attentive to every need I didn't even know I had some of these needs. And so she was very attentive to the point where she was giving away her energy and her opportunities to take care of herself for the sake of love toward me. So the question for today is that loving? Is it loving to either of us, actually? And this is something that I wanted to come back to. I'm going to come back to this point. But the question for me here is, it's looking at the difference between the feeling and the responsive actions to the situation at hand. Okay, because we have feelings that are based on our beliefs and our history and our memories and what we wish to have happen in our lives. And those are powerful, and they're loud in our minds. They're loud in our bodies even. But if we really listen to what is being called for right now, So I want to say a couple of phrases to help you remember this. One of them we've talked about before on these Mondays and elsewhere is just the very simple and profound question, what wants to happen? Okay, what wants to happen? And that takes a little bit of space. That takes a little bit of a pause to be able to recognize, to allow enough time to feel what wants to happen in this situation. And it may be different from what you wanted to have happen. So you have to remember that the little operator up in our minds may have different ideas from what the need is. And that's why it's so important to distinguish between these two things. We can feel love even toward people we don't like very much. And that's still different from loving, because we may take no steps, no actions in their direction that express that love, that turn it into loving. Similarly to ourselves, we may tell ourselves, and this gets back to this question, and I saw Cheryl had a question about clarifying the body image in love. So let's just pull it back to that as an example here. We can tell ourselves that we love ourselves, but we may do things that are not loving in support of that whole person. And so we may carry a negative self-image and then do what Masami said. I don't like what I look like. I don't like who I am. And to help myself get out of that feeling, I'm going to give myself something I love. So this is where we get into trouble with foods and things like that, or habits or addictions.
Or Chris, it could be opposite. You know, right now it's a very, I don't know the term, but it's like a positive body image is really a big one, which is important, you know, that we want to have everybody to feel positive about who they are. But sometimes I hear them take it to the extreme where it's all about cultivating the positive body image and not enough understanding the biology and the science. So to say, okay, you can eat whatever you want because we want you to have a positive body image. Well, so my question is that truly loving? You know, if you continue to eat things and poison your body, but you still keep working on, but I have a positive body image. So that's where it's taken too far, as I've also seen that too, you know, so it could be both directions.
So one other thing on that same note, okay, there was a Japanese Zen teacher. He's been gone now for a couple of decades, but he had this saying that was really helpful for me, and it's something that I think it's just so simple that it's very easy to remember. And he said, we have to take care of this moment. We have to take care of this moment. And that to me is what loving is about. Loving is taking care of this moment. And that includes me, that includes you. And some of these things that we practice or we talk about, you know, we've done some of these things on these calls before, like the rain meditation, for example. Well, that's really a practice of loving. I'm going to just repeat what those letters stand for. It's R stands for recognizing what's here. The A stands for allowing it to be. The I stands for inquiring about what wants to happen gently. And the N is about nurturing whatever the needs are in response to what's here now. So this is what we're getting at when we engage in these kinds of practices. It's not just an intellectual exercise. We're not just trying to split hairs about these two words. We actually have a very different experience with each of them. And it's really important to understand this, the feeling state of love, that we can feel it in our body. We can feel it everywhere. But when it comes to action in response to what's happening in us and outside of us in the world, it's so critical to learn to listen to that and to move toward what is needed and what wants to happen.
And on that note, I'm going to bring it back to, my day-to-day work that I do. And then going back to the Costco thing with me, right? So loving, I wrote down a note. I put, loving is seeing past your own self-interest. So loving is seeing past your own self-interest. And this is basically, I think when I work with clients and even with myself, is that because I love myself, I want to treat myself. Because I love myself, I want to reward myself. And this is when I can often make the wrong choices by, purchasing, eating things, doing things, saying yes to certain things that it's actually ultimately not loving at all. So loving is seeing past your own self-interest. And you might think, oh, that's for other people, how to be loving to others. But the self-interest from my head is reward, something that is deserving to me, something that is interesting to me, something that I want. So my head is wanting, fulfill this moment with wants and rewards. Okay. But if you just paused and came back to this moment, and if you asked yourself, what is this moment wanting me to express? What is it? What's happening in this moment? Well, in this moment, my body is saying, I'm so tired. I just want to sleep, but you don't let me sleep. So you try to get the energy from popcorn. You try to get energy from crackers. You're trying to get energy from the chocolate bars. When in fact, if I just stood there long enough and listened in, my body would have said, I'm not hungry. I am just tired. I want you to go home and take a nap. That's probably what would have said. Then attended to that need, then that would be very loving action on my part. So I hope I'm distinguishing that. Okay. And it does require all of us to pause. And when you do the muscle testing, don't just test it on what you think it's about that. I see this all the time. Every week is like certain supplements, certain foods. They will say, oh, I think it's great because these ingredients are awesome. Da, 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 da. So-and-so told me that this is great for that. Da, da. So the person is trying to convince me that the product that she or he is using is great and it's rewarding to their system. But that is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, what is this doing to your body? Is it loving? Is it a loving gesture on your part? And oftentimes I see a difference. And when I bring it up, they are often shocked by the fact that, whoa, I thought this supplement was great for X, Y, and Z. I thought these foods were great for X, Y, and Z. But in fact, that's not what you need at this moment. Maybe later, but not at this moment. So I hope that distinctions are very important to feel. That's why Chris had you feel into it. So next time you can go, oh, that's a love that I'm feeling. But is it a same as loving gesture? So remember what your answers were, because those will give you clues to where you're standing, where you're doing, where you're living from day to day. Yeah. And, sorry, Chris, is that, I lived with a mother who, I'm sure she loved me, but she was very cruel towards me. I'm sure she had love for me and, she fed me and she did the things that I will be able to survive and live, but she bullied me, right? So those are not a loving actions towards me. And so I'm sure you can relate to that. Many of you have these experiences that there's love, but there's not a loving actions to go with. Then, this is when I finally, as an adult, made a decision to not continue this very unhealthy relationship that I had with my own mother. And, has its own moments, but overall, I feel pretty settled and grounded by deciding not to have contacts with her. And, I'm not saying that is only way. And then, for some people, I still hear people say, oh, maybe someday you'll, reconnect and da da da. And I don't know. I'm not going to shut the door on that, but right now I need to focus on how to do more loving actions for myself and others. So I just wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that too, the experience of feeling what the loving is that's needed can often lead to, an uncomfortable or even painful contrast between what you thought was going to happen or what you wanted in the situation for yourself. And it's a really good way to check how you're oriented to whatever's going on. If you're feeling that, something that is good for the situation and everybody that's present is also something that's disappointing to you somehow, well, that might suggest that it's more about the fulfillment of some wish rather than about love or loving. And I wanted to just use the example of the social eating for me, which is something that became a really knee-jerk habit when we were in full lockdown. It was just the easiest thing to do. There was nowhere to go, not really anything to do that wasn't inside of our house. And so, of course, if Masami went to the kitchen at 8 o'clock at night and started finding things to snack on, it seemed very appealing and natural to go and follow her in and do that. But then when I started to realize the impact that that was having on my system, and it was clear because it was affecting my body. And so when I caught that and stopped doing it, I have to admit that there was somewhere each time that happened that I would say, no, you're not going to do that right now because that's not what you need. That it was almost the feeling of the little boy in me being told by a parent, you can't have it. And there's that little kind of like, oh, kind of kicking the ground, like, kind of feeling. But then if I let that happen, it just went away. I found something else to do. Something else occupied my attention, and I didn't really get drawn back to it. And after about 3 days of doing that, it was a lot easier to say no. So just to be aware that there can be that tension between these states of love around yourself or someone else, and then the loving that's required to meet the needs of the moment.
Mm.
So there are a couple of comments that maybe we can roll back to. Cheryl had an interesting one that I wanted to bring up. She says, so I was contemplating something similar this morning. I haven't taken any pharmaceuticals for years. I'm having such ordeals with doing neti pot twice a day. It occurs to me I maybe should take an allergy pill. I did yesterday because my body was miserable, but daily feels so unloving, yet necessary. So I think the question here is, what is the loving thing in this situation? Is it being very black and white about never taking any kind of medicine because you took a stance that says, I'm the kind of person that doesn't take pharmaceuticals. So that can be a very rigid stance. Which one's more loving? Is it to follow because you said that's how you're going to be, or to respond to the need of your body in a way that is addressing the need of the moment? Now, that could be a rhetorical question, but Cheryl, you might have an answer for that one yourself. What do you think? What is the loving thing here when you said you're so miserable? And is it a one-time fits all solution? Just because you took it one day, does that mean now forever you've broken the seal and now you have to forevermore take the antihistamines or whatever you're taking forever, every day? What does that feel like? So I'm just going to float that out. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I kind of went to the practical, if the neti pot's not working, because as much as I talk about neti pot, I really can't stand neti pots because my nostrils are not made like Chris's nostrils. So he can do them like all the time. And I just hate it. I just feel like, why am I pushing myself in through a swimming pool? So I don't like it. Um, but just like a once in a while, I'll do them. And then I often will do like steam or even like using nebulizer might be good. And on my website, I have pulled it up here so I can tell you, but it's called Pure HOCL. That's a spray that you can get on Amazon, HOCL. And that can be a good thing to put it in the nebulizer, or you can even just spray it or spray and then walk into it and breathe in from it. That would be good too. So, there are many things. And then also I wonder, miserable, there are degrees of misery. So for me, when I had the sinus issues, I had 3 rounds of just horrific sinusitis stuff. Just if I went to the doctor, they probably would have given me something to take, but I stayed with it. I really cleaned up my diet. I stopped eating sugar for so long. So it was starting to express it through my sinuses because all the sticky stuff was starting to come out. But I just kind of went into that misery knowing that this is miserable. It's okay that it's horrible. It's unbearable, but I'm just going to stick with it. And I did. So it's just the degree in which, where's your tolerance? And like Chris said, sometimes you may need to get decongestants, over the counter stuff to get you to sleep because sleep is so important. So if it's getting in the way of your sleep, you may need to do that for day or night and then just get your body back into energetic place, So there are a couple different things. I don't think it's just this or that or never or forever. You, like Chris said, you took it once, therefore you failed. It's not like that, and there's so many more other things that you can do. So I would explore. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I was thinking about too, and Cheryl will come back to your comment in a second, is if you are chronically low on energy, which is so many people in the world right now, this whole thing about loving takes energy. It requires energy output from you in order to practice in this active form of self-care that we're calling loving. Even to give it to other people, it requires energy. So if you're somebody who is just surviving, you're subsisting on, if you can imagine that hierarchy of needs, the pyramid from Abraham Maslow, and it's that bottom pyramid, which is just the most basic needs are being met. So food and shelter and water and things like that, clothing. If you're not doing much better than that and you're low on energy, you'll feel like you're not doing much better than that. And it makes it very difficult not only to get the signal about what's needed right now, but to have enough left to do more than survive. So that's another thing to factor in here, is that sometimes you need the taking care of the moment might be about meeting those most basic needs first, so that you can then start to explore other things besides that.
Well, and there's some comments about Dr. Zach Bush's ion sinus spray. Yeah, those are great too. And I think, you could look into all that. But one thing about the chronic sinusitis or sinus conditions is systemic. So and all sinus issues, I would say, meaning if it's chronic, that's been lasting for a while, that means there's a fungal overgrowth in your sinus. That's what the science is showing. So, this is where I'll be very careful to go and take antibiotics because it's not about bacterial issues. It's a fungal issue and it's a systemic issue. It can impact your lungs. It can impact your small intestine, or small intestine can impact your sinus. So, we're kind of going on to a different topic here, but It's a systemic thing that it doesn't get resolved by just doing neti pot. It's a total food cleanup. It's a complete lifestyle changes. It's a commitment to really work on sinuses. Yeah. And it takes rounds of them, actually. Yeah. So that would be my question to you. It's like, what are you eating? Have you changed your diet? Have you cleaned up what you're doing? Are you drinking pure water? Are you, doing all these things? I mean, it's a multiple things. So that's where I would go first, is to look at what's on your plate, clean up your diet, digest, and don't have undigested debris in your gut, because that's going to feed the fungus even further. So, and it's very important to remember that it's a fungal yeast issues that's happening in your sinus and not bacteria.
Sometimes we get the signals from what the fungus loves, and our brain starts telling us that we love it and should have it. But really, it's the overgrowth that's talking. So, I mean,
and I wanted to just say about that lastly. Okay. Sorry, Chris. I just had a client this morning and she was doing really well. She lost 5 inches off of her midsections and thighs and everything, doing great with working with me. And, but she said last week, she said something switched on and she was taking my weight loss resistance course. And she's like, some aliens or, some like external energies were starting to talk to her, and they were making her eat chocolates and cookies and biscuits and all that. And I actually found out that she started to have fungal overgrowth that started to show up in her skin. So itchy, rashy stuff, right? So it can, and this is what Chris was starting to say, that they have their own mind of their own. So, and they are so much more of them than you. So they're going to speak louder. They want sugar. They want fruits. They want those plantain chips. They want those biscuits and cookies. They do. So they will overpower your thinking, and they will make you drive to the nearest store. They will make you buy these products, and they will make you pay for them, and you come back from that. Okay. So know that. Don't judge yourself. Know that you are more than just you. You are a conglomerate of bugs, fungus, yeast, mold, parasites, bacteria, you name it. You are so much more than just what you think you are. So sometimes you just need to sit and say, whose voice is this? And I call them the aliens, actually. These are the aliens that live inside you, and they have a lot to say about your food choices. So if you find yourself all of the sudden wanting the sugar, don't blame yourself. Just pause and say, okay, aliens, let's have a meeting. Come on over, fungus. Come on over, parasites. Come on over, viruses and yeast and whatnot. Just let's have a meeting about this. I don't want you living freeloading in my house. I want to kick you out. So we're going to have some kind of a relationship here that's amicable. That's what you have to do. Okay. And don't beat yourself up. This is what I said to my client this morning. I said, don't beat yourself up. You've done a great job. This is why they're starting to speak up, because they're losing their homes. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. Okay.
So a couple of comments that came in on that. Lynn said, hold on, my screen just jumped. This helped me so much, the understanding that they have a strong voice. And Mary says, ha ha ha, this is hilarious and summed up my last 30 minutes. Okay. So yeah, so the little aliens. And then Cheryl said, I love that. Hold a meeting and set boundaries. Thanks. So one thing to think about too is if your body, I want to just put it this way. Just because you use the word love in a sentence in your head doesn't mean you're practicing self-love. So if I say, well, I love ice cream or I love beer. Well, when
those are two things that we ate over the last, last 4 days, we ate both of those items.
Yeah. So just because I love them in my mind doesn't mean that I'm engaging in a loving practice for my system when I do that. I personally am not an extremist. So occasionally I am going to say yes to the things that I also enjoy. But I also know my tendencies, which, if left to their own devices, and the bugs included, because they have a strong vote, sometimes they're a majority. And if I listen to that too much, then I may end up saying yes frequently. And that's where things get out of balance. And that's where we start having longer term breakdowns unnecessarily and complications with our health and our energy and our relationships that don't need to be there. So just use that as a little test. When you use the word love internally or to somebody else, what are you really saying? What are you really talking about? Are you talking about something you want, or are you talking about taking care of that moment? Okay. So we're right at our end of our hour, but do you want to say a quick word about the summit that's coming up?
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Well, I was already interviewed in April. So, but I will be aired tomorrow at, what was it? 11 something, 10 something. Okay. So, Chris has put it up there, but it's, Intuitive Medicine Summit, and I'll be on tomorrow. So please, please watch. I'm always nervous, so it's too late to fix it, but put loving energy towards it anyway, because I'm such a hard critic of myself. So, and one of the things that I'm working on is to give myself a little break from perfection, break from working all the time. So please watch, please support, and if you enjoyed my talk, please let the Shift Network know at the end and say, I really liked Masami's talk, and here's why. If you didn't like it, probably just don't say that. Okay. That'll be a loving thing for you to do. Okay. So thank you, everyone. We will continue with probably something along this line of conversations this month. I don't know exactly, but this is a good topic to continue. And then maybe we'll go into more of a physiology stuff as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.